Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OCP Open Forum, Ask the Experts. I'm John DeBellis, Managing Editor of Missals and Periodicals here at OCP. We're excited to take your questions. I want to take a minute to introduce our OCP experts. We have Glenn Byer, Worship Publications Manager and author. Jethro Higgins, Ecommerce Manager and also a Youth Ministry Coordinator. We have Jack Martin, who is our Liturgy.com Manager. Pedro Rubalcaba, Director of Music Development and Outreach. He's also a bilingual clinician and composer. Rick Maudlin is not able to join us this morning, but he is here in spirit, and he is our Music Development Manager. Angela Westhoff-Johnson, Director of Product Development and Music Director. Wade Whistler, our publisher. And Ken Canedo, Music Development Specialist and author, most recently of the book From Mountains High. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Little stuff before we get started. Your best viewing will come if you close all your other programs or applications. So if you're playing Candy Crush or Word with Friends, might be a good time to close those now. This will improve your viewing and sound quality. Questions, you can use the questions section on your control panel. Questions can be typed in at any time. If we don't get to your answers today, we'll follow up with answers and post them somewhere on ocp.org, which I'm sure Jethro or Jack can tell me where. Let's see, what's next here? Oh, we wanted to just let you know before we get the questions started that we're so thankful that you're here, and we're thankful for you tuning in and your questions and concerns. It's with the input and guidance from you and so many that we better our mission of service to the church. But in conclusion to our webinar today, our publisher Wade Whistler is going to address questions that many of you have had regarding the impact of Sing to the Lord, a New Song, a recent pastoral letter on music published by Archbishop Alexander Sample of our home archdiocese, the Archdiocese of Portland in Oregon. And with that said, let's turn to our panel of experts. For question number one, Jethro. This person asks, I'm not quite sure how to discover a new piece of music on ocp.org. How would I find an SAB octavo, for example?
That's a great question. Thank you for the question. It's a little difficult to demonstrate as I don't have a screen to show you on, but you can find music by different voicing by using the search on ocp.org. Once you type something in the top there, you're presented with facets on the left-hand side of the screen. And if you scroll down to the bottom of that left-hand side, you'll see a whole section there on voicing, where you can select multiple voicings or a particular one like SAB. Also on that left-hand side, you'll see now Octave Series. So if you want to find an SAB octavo in a particular series, you can do that as well. You can mix and match whichever facets you want to click there to narrow down your search results in the search. We understand that experience has a little bit of a usability issue at the moment, and we will be addressing that in the near future.
Thanks, Jethro. All right. Dr. Glenn, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Why do hymns and psalms get removed from breaking bread?
My favorite question. I really hope that everybody hears the question, because it's probably one of the most important things that I have to do in my job is to work with the group here to determine what songs will be removed from breaking bread to make new room for the new songs that are coming in. Those vital new songs that keep the program fresh and vital. One of the most important ways that we determine whether or not a song should stay in the program is what you tell us. The annual survey is absolutely critical in our decision making. It's not the only reason. Sometimes a song will be removed for theological reasons or because it's just outlived its usefulness. You know, we don't sing all the music that we used to sing back in the day. And some songs just fall out of use. But the key to the whole thing is whether or not you, our customers, are still using the song. And the only way we know is when you tell us, either through the survey or by contacting us directly. Some people have asked if a song can get back into the program once it's taken out, and that can happen. We are actually adding a song back in the coming year that had been removed in previous years. So just because the song's been removed, don't give up. If you really feel it's important to your ministry, make sure you let us know.
Excellent. was going to say that was going to be one of my sub-questions. Is it possible to request songs to be returned to the Missals? So thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, on to Angela Westhoff-Johnson. How do you arrange your SATB choirs for Mass? Do you arrange within the sections by strength, color, tone? Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. A difficult one because my answer's squishy and I apologize for that, but it really depends. I'm sure you knew that was coming. So my choir is much more successful singing in mixed formation. So not keeping all the sopranos and altos together, but we always learn music in sections. If it's a brand new piece of music, we need the strength of the section to kind of support each other, to help each other learn the piece of music. This past Sunday, we did this great choral anthem by Michael Jonkus, O Burning Mountain. It's beautiful, lots of parts. So I think there's maybe 6 or 7, maybe 8 parts, I don't know. Beautiful, but not difficult. It isn't always that 8-part music is so difficult. Once you learn it, it's not difficult. But we were struggling to keep it in tune, singing in sections. The minute that we went into mixed formation, it just gelled. They could hear the different parts. You need to hear the basses to know the root of the chord, or maybe the altos have the third of the chord, and that needs to keep the pitch up for the chord. So mixed formation is great. Not everybody can sing in mixed formation, so I recognize that. If you have an SAB choir, you might put the men in the middle of the choir with the ladies on the outside to get a fuller kind of sound. I usually like the sopranos or a few sopranos closest to the assembly. They support the melody of an assembly piece the most, so having them near the assembly can really help.
Thank you so much. All right, Pedro. What would be the best way to help this person asking, not mine, our Hispanic music ministers with learning basic music reading? Sub-question, are there any music retreats that OCP offers for choirs or music directors?
Okay, well, thanks for the question. That's a challenging proposition. One of the things that happens is that, particularly when it comes to immigrant communities, not all of them, obviously, but some immigrant communities, the level of music reading and even reading period might be low. So one of the things is to look at developing music reading skills as a skill, as a language, and to be able to encourage people to, first of all, to look at the written music on the page is a great start. I know one of the things that happens in many of Hispanic choirs is that they prefer just the words only. And because, again, they're not used to seeing the written music on the page and the text with hyphenated and it kind of, so first of all, I would say get people used to seeing the music on the page, explain what the staff means. One of the things I found, because someone told me in a parish that I was visiting one time, is that they actually all go to YouTube to learn how to begin to make sense of music theory, basic music reading. I've also found that if you have someone in a local high school or community college that's a music teacher and that's bilingual, that can come and work with people, that I've seen that work as well. Often I find that young people that are studying music, it's high schools or elementary schools, they actually can be a bridge with their parents and other adults in the choirs to be able to make sense of that, and they feel more comfortable. So one other resource that I would recommend too, because I've seen it, I've looked at it, I've not used it, but I've seen it, it's very sound. It's actually published by WLP, and it's a book that's originally in English, but they have a Spanish version of it, Aprender a leer música. Aprende a leer música, it's called. I think it's by Breedlove or something like that is that last name. So look for that. So just some suggestions there. The other part is I think you need to just be consistent in that. and take time to go through the music. One of the easiest things to teach, I have found, is to actually use Respondi Acclama to go through the psalm verses, because the movements aren't very drastic, and kind of teach how to listen to intervals, and that helps as well. The second part of the question with regard to formation and training, OCP through our music outreach department does provide music and training for musicians, and part of it are technical skills through our OCP Instituto. So just feel free to call OCP and ask for music outreach, and we can certainly assist you with that.
Excellent. Thanks, Pedro. All right, Jack, liturgy.com question. Are there any plans to have music suggestions for daily Mass?
Oh, great question. Thanks. Glad to have the opportunity to talk about liturgy.com, because we released the new site in July of last year, so it's been about 8 months now that we've been working with customers to keep making sure that the site meets all their needs, and that's one of the huge needs for some that we haven't met yet, is to have this better functionality to allow you to plan weekday masses and find song suggestions for those masses, which I think is kind of the key point that the site isn't serving right now. So just before this, I was running around my iPad looking at new calendar designs that allow us to more easily plan for weekday masses and provide all the song suggestions. So we're working on that right now with our web development team, and we're looking at getting the first pieces of that out right at the beginning of April. It's actually pretty cool. I think, Jethro, you could speak to this too. We've recently expanded our web development team, so we're able to more continually make updates to all of our digital products and services, whether it's liturgy.com or ocp.org, that I know you guys are working really hard on.
Yeah, absolutely.
To make continued improvements.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard your feedback, and there are some challenges with some of our web properties that you've expressed to us. And this, what Jack is alluding to with the expansion of our IT department, is that we really have the resources and tools now to respond more quickly to your needs and your concerns with our online properties. And so just be aware that we are going to be making some more drastic changes than you're used to on our sites to respond to your feedback and give you what you need to plan your liturgies and to find the music you're looking for.
Yeah, that's something I was sharing with a customer recently, because in talking with them, I realized, when we released the initial liturgy.com website in 2003, we put it out there and didn't really change anything about it for the next 15, 16 years. And so we released this new liturgy.com, and everyone said, it's going to be exactly like this forever with no updates. I said, oh no, we're going to be continually updating it. And a shout out to any of our liturgy.com users out there that have been providing feedback on things they want the site to do to help make their music planning easier. It's been incredibly helpful to have that relationship with our customers. We're so lucky that you care so much about your music planning. It lets us make the product better for you.
Yeah, to piggyback on that for OCP.org, our previous versions of our site didn't have the ability to do some of those faceting search options we talked about right at the beginning of the webinar. So a lot of people don't know that they're there because we are doing a lot of changes and a lot of updates to our systems. So be on the lookout for more changes to positively impact your experience.
Excellent. Thanks, you guys. What a true testament to the interaction between customer and us and how much we listen and apply those suggestions. All right, Ken. As a composer, what is the most effective way to submit new materials that are necessary to OCP's catalog? What's the criteria? Is there a forum where artists can see what OCP is currently looking for?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. I would say that if you are grounded in a community that celebrates the liturgy, you have a great head start on composing, because we like to look at music that is for the liturgy, basically. There's a lot of great Christian music out there that speaks of the personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and that's part of it, that's important. But the music we're looking for serves the liturgy. So think about your own community and what might you be using or needing for the entrance chant, or for communion, or for preparation of the gifts, for sending. Think about setting the official texts of the Mass, particularly the responsorial song or the Mass texts. Various holy days and special occasions throughout the year, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Vigil, all these require music. What kind of music would best serve these liturgical moments? And as far as submissions, the easiest way to submit is to go on ocp.org, our website, and in the search mode, enter music submissions. You'll be taken to a page that gives you pretty exact instructions on the best way to submit new music if you're a composer. It requires a lead sheet, of course, the notes, notation, and the lyrics, chords on top, keyboard arrangement if you have it, but not necessary. People often ask, do we need to make a recording? Recordings are very helpful, but if you do not have the resources to make a recording, our music review committee can sing through your manuscript. So please do not feel intimidated by not being able to make a recording. Is there a forum where an aspiring composer can find out what OCP is currently looking for? That's a great idea. I know out there on Facebook and many other social media entities, there are Catholic liturgical composers that gather together. Maybe someday here at OCP we might do something on our own like that. My colleagues might correct me if they already know something like that. And people also ask, what's the best time of year to submit your music? We listen to music, we review music every week. There is no special season when we're really more open to listening to music. We pride ourselves at OCP in responding quickly. If you submit music, I'm not saying we'll respond tomorrow, but within the next month or two, we'll try to respond. That's an important part of our ministry here, is to be responsive to all the wonderful creativity of the people who love Catholic music.
I'll just supplement that a little bit, Ken, to say that if you want to have discussions about what music we're looking for, Facebook is a perfect opportunity. You can go on our Facebook page, OCP Music or OCP Musica, and start that discussion in our comments threads and see if your colleagues want to banter back and forth, and some of our internal people might also jump in there to offer our feedback. So do take advantage of Facebook. And that music submissions page that Kim was mentioning is also available at the footer of the website in the About Us section.
Excellent. Well, Jethro, how provincial that you were speaking, because the next question is for you.
Oh.
This person asks, we're having trouble getting new singers and musicians for our Life Team Mass on Sunday nights. Any suggestions?
A problem that I'm very familiar with. Thank you for the question. I do have a few suggestions. One thing is it's important to piggyback on the parish efforts to add people into different ministerial opportunities. We do a ministry fair every year. I mean, many parishes do that. Make sure that you're in there specifically as that Life Teen group and not just music in general, so that people can see it. It has that exposure. Make sure you mention it if you have the opportunity at the beginning of Mass or in the announcements afterwards, especially in conjunction with that ministry fair. And an opportunity that I've had, because I do both music ministry and youth ministry, is that I have the opportunity to provide music on retreats where you can see the youth in action. And those aspiring musicians, those people coming up and learning their trade, getting them involved early is very helpful. A lot of the music they can jump into really quickly because they've been listening to it for a number of years. So pulling on the youth in the program is also helpful. One of the problems with youth ministry and with Life Teen music groups specifically is the turnover rate, because your high school students who are playing in the band, they go off to college, and then you lose that guitarist that you had, or you lose that great singer. The same thing is true with college students who may be there seasonally. They may be gone during the summer. So there is a big challenge there, and I think reaching out to the people who are rising up in the ranks and not leaning so heavily on people who've been there for a while is one of the ways you can make sure that you keep a balance.
Yeah. I like that idea of you modeling music and sharing music as a way to inspire and sort of gauge who's interested instead of just blindly asking people if they want to join. I think that's a great.
It's also on a retreat. It's a setting that's very open for young people. They may be willing to jump in and sing with you on a retreat when they wouldn't necessarily be willing to do it at Mass. And you can help cultivate that desire in their hearts so that after a couple of retreats, they may be willing to jump into the music group now that they're familiar with singing with you and what the songs are. So getting them involved in a less threatening environment is really helpful to getting them more involved.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, Glenn,
Yes.
please go over the best way to choose songs for the following parts of Mass. Opening, preparation of the gifts, communion, and sending. Or you could just do a general, because that seems like pretty much hosts the whole Mass. So.
It's certainly an important part of what we do in music ministry. There are the wonderful document from the bishops, Sing to the Lord, that tells people really good guidance on how to select music for Mass. I think you should first of all go to that and read it. That would be my first advice. Beyond that, in a nutshell, remember what's going on at the Mass at that moment. The music that you choose needs to be liturgically appropriate. We were just talking beforehand, at communion time, it's a communion procession. So the song A should be about communion, but it should also be something that people could sing without the aid of a book. It has a refrain that is easy for people to latch onto. At the beginning of Mass, it's the entrance song has as a purpose to form people into a celebrating assembly, to prepare them to hear the word and to celebrate the Eucharist. So the song there should be about either the feast that we're celebrating and or the act of gathering and or. All of that comes together into this one song, and it should have a processional feel to it because that's what's going on. At the preparation of the gifts, a little less so. You can make it more of a seasonal thing or something more to do with the feast. And as for sending forth, at the end of Mass, I think everyone's heard this 100 times by now, there is no song in the actual liturgy of the Mass. There is nothing there that says you have to have a song at that moment. But it's become pretty much a normal part of what we do. And in that case, obviously, it's about taking what we've... the problem is that at the end of Mass, we should be different than we were at the beginning. So think about what has happened during that Mass. What have the texts, what is the preaching? I mean, you need to know that ahead of time, obviously. But what do you expect will have changed in our hearts because we celebrated this Eucharist? And based on that, it should be pretty clear what the sending forth song should look like. So that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, beautifully said. Angela, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, I know you play music.
I think he said it all.
That's
He
my
has
problem.
the PhD in liturgy. Yeah. If you do have a choir, there are, I think,
Yes.
like Glenn was saying, there's a little more flexibility during the liturgy of the preparation of the gifts. And maybe at the end of the communion procession, we don't want to call it a meditation, but there is a moment where it's difficult to keep choirs. Why do you come to a choir rehearsal and rehearse if you never sing choral music? So we publish a lot of beautiful choral music that works throughout the liturgy. But preparation of the gifts is for the most part that moment to do that. But I love what you said about the sending forth. What have we just done and where are we going from that point?
Thank you.
And this segues perfectly into the next question, which is also for you. What choral music does OCP have based on proper introit and communion texts?
That is a great question, and what Glenn just said, incorporating and Ken mentioned this, the text of we sing the liturgy, we just don't sing at the liturgy, right? So antiphons are the hot thing right now, right? For a couple of years. OCP publishes some great, I brought some little visual aids for you, because I think these are beautiful. I don't know how high I have to hold these up. I can't probably do this very long, but so Columba Kelly is the composer of these, the well-known Columba Kelly from St. Meinrad. What he's done differently here in these many volumes that we have here that are seasonal. So this lovely Advent through Christmas season. The entrance antiphon, the text of the introit is done by the choir or the cantor. So you say choral music, there's nothing overly choral about these. So they can be done by a choir in unison or a cantor alone. So there's the entrance antiphon, and then there's a congregational refrain. That's what I like the most about these. It's a short little 2 measures, sometimes 3 measures. The cantor or the choir sings it the first time, the congregation then would sing it after that. And then the verses are psalm settings. And it is a great way to incorporate the actual proper text and have your assembly also feel like they're participating in some way. It's not as much as singing a hymn. They're not participating the same way. We have many hymns that incorporate the text of the antiphons as well. So the St. Meinrad editions have both introits and communion antiphons, but the choral antiphons that we have, I am a ginormous fan of these two. Shout out to Mr. Walker, who Ken mentioned if you are using, as a composer, using things in your parish with your choir, you know if it works or if it doesn't work. You can make tweaks. That's what he does all the time. I've used these now ever since we published them. Now they're like falling off a log. My choir can sing them practically without the music. So often there are 2 communion antiphon texts. Sometimes there's just 1. They don't change from year to year. That's the great thing. It's not like the Psalter that's on a 3-year cycle. These are the same every year. But he may do a unison chant setting, and then of another text, a 4-part. They're very exciting. So these are choral. These can be done by choir or cantor.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, Pedro. What constitutes a great multicultural mass? And this person says, our parish family is about 50% Latino, but we seem separate. Do you have any ideas to help us integrate more? I think music is a way, question mark, the person says.
Well, I think when we talk about multicultural mass, I mean, something that comes to mind is emphasis on the culture. So the liturgy itself has a culture, but the people that come together form a unique culture when they come together. Oftentimes we have different language masses, so sometimes you need to look at the multilingual aspect of it. But one of the things I think it's going to be key is how do we as a parish celebrate being Catholic? How do we interact together? If the only time we get together is at that 1 or 3 or 4 times a year, then we're going to have a heck of a time trying to accomplish that. So I would say really work at the celebrating together outside of the liturgy, even more importantly before we begin to doing these multicultural liturgies. So if we're actually living together, then we have a better way of celebrating together. If we're actually playing and working and eating together, then we have a better way, a better chance of having very good celebrations of multicultural liturgies, as you want to call them, intercultural liturgies. The one thing that I think is important when it comes to music is to develop a common repertoire. So often we wait we wait till the one liturgy or Holy Week or to bring everything in together. You're going to have a hard time making that happen. So I would say that throughout the year, in Spanish, in English, in whatever language that you might have, unfortunately, most of the music that we tend to have tends to be Spanish and English. And so when you talk about other language groups and other cultures, it's going to be a little more difficult. But there is music that we publish that is multilingual as well. But when it comes to, for instance, mass settings, do you have a bilingual mass setting that functions well in English and Spanish? We publish some of those. For a long time we published Misa Santa Cecilia, Misa Santa Fe, Misa del Pueblo Inmigrante, Mass of the Immigrant Peoples. And the key to having this as a mass that you sing in English as well as in Spanish is that when you come together, people know that, and you can sing it together. So that's one of the things to do. We have settings of bilingual psalms that are as collections that you're free to use and free to peruse as well. But there are also songs that you keep in mind that maybe originally only in English, or originally in Vietnamese, or originally in Spanish, that have been translated and now have versions in Spanish or English. Some of these are in Flor y Canto, some of these are in Breaking Bread and other publications that we have. Use those in your community so that when you come together, that they're able to sing in any of the languages. The other thing that I would recommend as well is that from time to time, singing songs that come right from the Roman Missal, that are either in Latin or Greek, and these work well as well. So there are many, many ways to look at this, and obviously people say, this person that asked the question that music might be a key. I think it can be. Sometimes it can be a divisive force too. So work on gathering the community first. I would recommend that you look for our webinar on intercultural liturgies. It's a 4-part series in there. If you would go to OCP, and I think in the blog section, you can connect to our webinars that are archived in our YouTube channel. So I recommend to go there. Some wonderful things to look at there.
I like that you talk about it in the context of the culture of the family of the parish. It makes me think, if I want to connect with my son more, do I just go to him and say, hey, I really like the Bangles from the 80s, listen to this? No, I spend time with him, right? I do other things that my family does. So that's really great. Thank you for saying that. All right, Jack. Someone needs help navigating through the new Liturgy.com planner. They are completely lost, as it is so much different than the old one. Yeah. Can you help them maybe talk about how it's different and what some of the updates are? And
yeah, I think there are a lot of things that are the same about Liturgy.com, the update that released in July, and a lot of things that are different. And as we were just mentioning earlier, it's still evolving and changing too. So how do you even keep up with the updates? Right. I think the first place I would direct someone would just be to find the help page that has a pretty solid selection of tutorial videos that kind of start at your most basic of Liturgy.com functions. How do I move around the site? How do I use the calendar to start planning music for upcoming liturgies? In fact, Jethro, you did a lot of these tutorial videos that start at the basic steps, which I think is really helpful to start out on that site. And I would say to keep, to all those Liturgy.com users out there, you probably notice now when you log in, you land on a dashboard page that has the most recent updates we've made to the site. It also has a coming soon, here's what we're working on, that weekday mass song suggestions is listed there. Hey, we're working on this. That's a page to pay attention to, because largely every 2 weeks, we're making some sort of update to the site. We've fixed a bug, we've added this new piece of content, we've changed this feature, updated it based on your feedback. So paying attention to that dashboard page is really helpful. And when you see something new listed there, especially a new feature, there might be a link there that points you right back to that help tutorials page, because we're going to be releasing new tutorial videos based on new features that we put out there. So when this weekday mass planning song suggestions bit gets out there, there'll be a video you can watch that says, okay, let's do that now. Let's plan a weekday mass. Let's find song suggestions. I think it's we really want to walk you through that process, because I know to some users it is a really new experience. One thing we talked about when we were designing this new site was well, okay, we've had this one there for 15 years and it hasn't changed, it hasn't moved 1 inch in that entire time. And so the change is really drastic. So we want to keep guiding you how to use what's there, trying to keep it as similar to what you're used to as possible, but then also let it evolve beyond the old site. I was noticing in some of our testing we got kind of, a lot of our users were used to it working this way where you'd have to do all these peculiar steps to achieve your goal. And part of our listening hard has been listening to like what the actual goal in your music planning is, and how can we build the site to do that in an even easier way. But in doing that, now it's a new way that you need to do that action. So we're going to keep doing our best to guide you through that whole process.
Watch this. This is a miracle of modern technology. Because my email isn't working on my iPad, I just received questions from that side of the screen.
Wonderful.
Okay, let's see. Next up is, let's go with Ken. We need more music for children, and where can we find it? I'm interested in music for children's choir that can also allow them to be leaders in introducing song to the whole community. Could you please name some resources for easy music for children ages or grades 1 to 5th grade?
Terrific question. And it goes hand in hand with what Jethro was talking about, with recruiting for his high school, life teen choirs is, we need to start building up choir participation, liturgical participation in grade school. And OCP has an array of wonderful resources for children. First and foremost, I want to mention High God by Carrie Landry and Carol Jean Kinghorn. They have been composing for the High God series since 1973. And it's been a terrific resource for the church. Just recently, OCP released High God 7. They're in the 7th volume now. Terrific new songs that will engage your children with gestures, with brilliant melodies, and with very basic theology that will engage the children in the sacred liturgy. I want to call attention to what Christopher Walker is doing with children. We think of Chris as a choral composer. He's had great success in that. He's written a lot of songs for children. His collection called Calling the Children, they've used those songs for years at First Communion. And he's also composed a terrific Way of the Cross for children, a way to engage children in an age-appropriate way in a very important prayer experience of the church. I also want to call your attention to something new we just published by Stephen Fishbacher in Scotland. It's called We Are Children, and it's basically songs that are based on teaching children various truths of our Christian faith with refrains that will engage them in singing. That's relatively new for us here. Stephen Fishbacher is a terrific composer. We have a number of resources such as Rise Up and Sing, which is a collection of songs like a hymnal for grade school children, and also Never Too Young, which is more of a middle school resource, but it's also good for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Never Too Young is kind of the little brother of the Spirit and Song series, the little sister of the Spirit and Song series, in which it has a good heaping helping of the Spirit and Song repertoire that was composed for teenagers and college-age students. But Never Too Young, I don't want to, I can't emphasize enough the importance of that resource for grade school children. Janet Vogt and Mark Friedman have written a very useful resource called Never Too Young Leaders Resource, which gives ideas for teachers and choir directors in the school situation on how to use the songs from Never Too Young based on the seasons, and ideas for student leadership. You talk about student leadership, there are certain parts of the Mass which lend itself well to empowering young people in leadership and liturgy. The responsorial song, the verse of the Alleluia, communion. These are occasions in which perhaps the people, of course, will sing the antiphon or sing the refrain, and perhaps a young student can sing the verses. And that's a good opportunity to allow the young people to introduce the songs at Mass. Please open your songbook, your Breaking Bread, to Songbook 385, and let's stand and sing. And then, have that young person be the person to introduce the song like that. These are all wonderful opportunities to engage young people in leadership and liturgy. And I also want to emphasize, even though we have wonderful resources for children, we also need to educate our children in the traditional hymnody of the church. Are our children learning, Holy God, we praise thy name, Immaculate Mary, and Hail Holy Queen? We often forget that because we're looking for this trendy beat music for children. Do they know how to sing Agnus Dei or Kyrie eleison? It's an important part of our Catholic heritage. In my parish, my youth choir looks forward twice a year, every Christ the King and also Good Shepherd Sunday, fourth Sunday of Easter. We sing Bach's Jesu Joy of Our Desiring. And to look at how they work hard for those two occasions to sing that Bach piece and how they enjoy singing that. And it's not just this music with a beat that Never Too Young or Spirit and Song is so important in doing. I think it's important to engage children in the traditional hymnody and choral music of the church, as well as the children's music that's composed specifically for them.
Can I just add one more thing? Lots of great information, Ken. We do have an Octave Series, actually 2 of them. One that is for younger children, Young People's Choral Series, and like Jethro mentioned, you can find those by searching by series. Lots of, I don't want to say just cute music, but a lot of cute music in that series for younger kids. And then we have a little more serious choral series for, how do I say this that it doesn't sound, like you're training them to sing in a perhaps a little more choral style. It's called Jubilate Deo. And it's a growing series for us. Some things in unison, some in 2-part, but it's to teach sort of the fundamentals of choral singing for younger voices.
I want to add that let's give our children a quality choral experience. Don't just stick them in front of a mic and have them sing whatever the song of the week is. Give them choral training.
Right.
Help them about breathing, help them learn about that, and phrasing.
Right.
You know.
We take into consideration vocal range. A lot of music that's more contemporary or pop, and they're singing with on the radio, it's lower than their voices naturally are at that age. So we think about range and have them appropriately be able to sing these to build some good vocal technique.
And Angela, you set me up nicely to talk about our new choral music page that just went live yesterday.
Yay.
You'll be able to access it from our new homepage, which will go live later today. So go to ocp.org to check that out. But on that new homepage, there'll be a link to a choral page where all of our Octave series will be highlighted for you to peruse. You'll be able to see a description of each Octave series, and then that'll drop you right into a full list of all of the pieces that belong within that series. So do check that out.
Right, and you'll see a facelift to a lot of the choral octavos that we already have, and in particular, Young People's Choral Series. It's adorable, the front of that. It's one of my favorites, but they're all really cute.
All right, thank you very much. Glenn, I'm going to give this to you, and other people can chime in, of course. How often should we change mass parts? It sounds like a trick question, because I would say never, right? But I think they're referring to the music in the mass part.
Mass settings, yeah.
When I was doing music in churches, this is a few years back, I wouldn't change a mass setting more than seasonally. It just doesn't make sense. You want the season to hang together, and if you take the long view, if you have a mass setting that is, say, really suited for Advent, 4 Advents later, people will say, oh, I know it's Advent because I hear the mass setting. And so a ritual memory gets associated with a mass setting. So I wouldn't change more than that. If you have limited resources, changing once a year is plenty. You can have one for ordinary time and one for the high seasons. I mean, that works fine too. So I think, Angela, how would you go about it?
I agree completely.
Oh,
well,
good.
we were just
I'm
chatting.
right for a change.
We agree a lot,
I
Glenn.
know.
We were just talking about that as we're heading into Lent, people often think that penitential season, you have to sing something in Latin.
True.
It works, but you don't have to sing something in Latin just during Lent. You can use a Latin setting anytime, although the feeling of chant, especially if it's done well, can add to the beauty of that penitential season. So I do change seasonally. I think we have 5 maybe settings that the assembly knows very, very well.
If I may add, one of the things that I've experimented with in the past is because Advent prepares us for Christmas, is to actually use the same setting for Advent and Christmas and just make the Advent singing of this Mass setting simpler, so all unison, for instance, and lacking all this instrumentation around it. And then once Christmas comes around, we add all the parts, we add all these other instruments. The same thing I've done for Lent and Easter. But it takes some planning ahead of time to say what's going to really work to make this highlight the season and give it a little more oomph, celebratory. The Advent is a little more subdued, Christmas high, Lent more subdued, Easter super high,
Right. Because one of the last things you want to do is introduce a brand new Mass setting that nobody knows on Easter Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
That's just a bad idea, okay?
All right.
I just want to add, my parish has a website, and when we teach new Mass settings and new songs, we'll put a link to the OCP YouTube video of that setting on our website, and then people can look at that, listen to it before the actual season that we sing the songs. It's a very useful tool.
All right. I'm going to do a few more questions, and then we're going to lead into Wade's answering of the many questions about the Archbishop's Pastoral Letter. First off, I'm just going to throw these ones out, and we'll see who grabs onto them. Should entrance hymns be joyful or more solemn?
Oh,
Yes.
Angela, would you care to go first?
I'm going to let Glenn do it.
Okay, Glenn.
The answer is yes.
Good answer.
Just because something is solemn
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's sad. Sad, joy, sadness, those are emotions. Solemnity is a different thing altogether. It's more of a mood that you want to set. And so, I think, for example, of a fairly new piece, Christopher Walker's This Day, it's very solemn, but at the same time, it's immensely joyful. So I think you can do both. At the same time, I understand the desire for maybe simpler music sometimes in some of the penitential seasons, and then, like Pedro said, more ornate during the high seasons. I think that's a really good way to go about it. So for the entrance song, you need to do what the song is meant to do. It's meant to help form us as a celebrating community. And so if it's Easter Sunday, then you gotta be just singing your ears off. It's gotta be something really strong. That's just the nature of the feast. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this past year and now going into Lent, we are doing a more contemplative Mass on Sunday evening. The lights are pretty dim, just enough to make people not be tripping over each other. We have candles throughout the whole church, and it really is lovely. And we, for an entrance chant, we were doing some of the simple refrains from Hear the Prayers That Rise, a wonderful resource. And then Rick Maudlin, who's a master pianist, kind of play for a little bit, and it's a short refrain or no singing as the entrance. And we really, it just changed, the season feels completely different.
Yeah.
All right. Last one before we get to Wade. I'm going to throw it out again. What makes a piece of music liturgically appropriate for the Mass? It's a pretty general question. Maybe we can talk about
I think,
how the process.
going back to what the good doctor has already said before, I think you need to take into account what the rite we are accompanying is. That in mind, I would look at not only sing to the Lord, but a lot of that flows from the general instructions of the Roman Missal, and the instruction is there. So it's not just about accompanying a procession, but the procession has a meaning, or that moment has a meaning. Dr. Glenn Byer talked already about what we do in the entrance procession, for instance. And so we need to look at the texts that we use. I think they're primarily scriptural. The other thing is that there has to be good theology. And I think we need to look at some of the songs that we're using and to judge them on those bases. We Sing to the Lord gives us a threefold judgment. It's a musical judgment, a liturgical judgment, and also a pastoral judgment. And so we need to take a look at those. You know, what does a liturgical judgment talks about the text, the theology, it talks about the moment that we're accompanying. The pastoral judgment talks about who is here in our midst, who are we serving with this music, who is the assembly. And the musical judgment, it's got to be good music. If it's something that we get tired of after a month, that really isn't good music. I mean, we're looking for the popular thing or something like that. So it has to be quality music. And we have to look at those judgments when we talk about what is appropriate for the liturgy.
Right. And Glenn, there's an executive or editorial board and a theological review board for all of our missals, correct? So they go through a process.
Oh boy, does our music go through a process. First, just to jump on Pedro's point, the three judgments aren't separate. You don't get to pick and choose. If it's good music but lousy theology, it's still not appropriate for the liturgy. In terms of music that gets submitted to us, we work with our established composers. They have their own theological background, their own theological training, many of them, and so they already have sifted the text through a theological filter. But once it gets to us, then we use our in-house theologians. Many of us at these tables have theological training. We have been to seminary or we've been to theology school. They call me doctor because I went to liturgy school, so I can interpret things from a liturgical perspective. But even that's not enough. Once a song is accepted and approved for inclusion in the missal, then we send it out to a theological review committee. And it's a group of 3 people that are some of the best theologians of the country, and they review the music, and they write back to us and they say yes or no. And we take those reviews very seriously because we want to make sure that we're publishing stuff that is theologically accurate. If you have a problem with one of our songs, and we do this all the time, write to us. Say, this song, whatever. And we have a number of songs that we've already written answers for you. We've already thought about these songs because other people have asked questions about the theology of them. And so we're able to give you some theological background on any number of the texts that are in our program.
All right. Thanks, everybody, so much. And thank you, Wade, our esteemed publisher, for being patient and me not peppering questions about Sing to the Lord a New Song and saving a spot for you at the end. So please, let us know about it.
Great, thank you, John. Yes, there have been a lot of questions about the pastoral letter that Archbishop Sample issued. It was released on January 25th for the Archdiocese of Portland, and ever since then, a lot of people have been asking, how does this affect OCP? In fact, there's been a lot of confusion and misunderstanding in that regard, and so I really hope that my brief comments here will answer some of the questions and provide some clarity. So I think many of you know that Archbishop Sample is the chair of the OCP Board of Directors. That's an ex officio role that every Archbishop of Portland has. And in his tenure in that role, he's been very supportive of OCP. He's worked very closely with John Lim, our previous publisher, with me. I meet regularly with him. We have a good working relationship. And he's expressed great confidence in OCP's commitment to publishing the highest quality liturgical music. So just a week or so, I guess it was just 1 week after the release of the Pastoral Letter, we had a Board of Directors meeting on February 1st, and the Pastoral Letter was on the agenda. So it was a good opportunity to discuss what it means and what it doesn't mean for OCP. And at the meeting, Archbishop Sample clarified a few important points. One was that the letter was intended to be a teaching document, not a juridical one having the force of law. So it's a document that's intended to educate, form, inspire local musicians, and it's primarily about practice and execution, not publishing principles, the things kind of further back in the process. Second, he made it clear that he issued the letter as the Archbishop of Portland, the shepherd of our local church, not as the chair of OCP's Board of Directors. The fact that he also happens to be the chair, he said, is purely accidental. And so it was really emphasizing in which role, right, was he releasing the letter. And thirdly, the letter is for the local church. It's a locally, it's a document for our archdiocese. And certainly other dioceses have their own guidelines that they live by. Now, OCP publishes music and other resources for certainly our local church, but far beyond, right? All churches throughout the United States and even internationally. And so we serve every archdiocese and diocese, every bishop and archbishop in this country and beyond. And that's why we submit our materials to the U.S. bishops. They are the primary authority over our publishing efforts, especially in terms of our annual cycle of permission requests, reviews, and approvals. Now, while USCCB has authority over liturgy in the United States, the local bishop is also the moderator, guardian, and promoter of the liturgy in his own diocese, of course, and can issue his own teaching for the local diocesan church. And that's exactly what Archbishop Sample has done with this letter. Glenn and others have mentioned, I'm so glad it came up even before I had to say anything, we have had good measures in place for many years to ensure the soundness and appropriateness of our music. That's already been spoken to very well. Songs that are added to our missals go through a very strict review process. They are sent out for theological review, and we have our internal committee that Dr. Byer mentioned. So there's quite a bit of scrutiny that goes into all our publishing. You know, we serve the universal church, and it's a big church, right? Here comes everybody, I think, as has been said. We publish music in a wide variety of languages, cultural models, styles, difficulty levels, and from different time periods, ancient and modern, all with the goal of making quality music accessible to the communities that we serve. And that will certainly continue. But I feel like the pastoral letters may be an opportunity to help people understand something that they may not already, and that is that we already provide resources for parishes that are striving to fulfill the expectations of this pastoral letter. I think maybe some assume that we don't. Let me just give a few examples. I promise I won't make us late, I hope. You let me know, John.
All right.
But Breaking Bread, for example, our best known, most used missal, already has 3 chant-style mass settings, 2 in English, 1 in Latin. And Breaking Bread, we learned recently after doing some research, provides more traditional hymns from the Archdiocese of Omaha core hymns list than any other resource out there, any other missal or hymnal, including hymnals like Adoramus and the St. Michael's hymnal. Our Psalters, Respond and Acclaim, and Spirit and Psalm provide verbatim settings of the responsorial psalm and gospel acclamation and have chant-style settings of the verses. And of course, Angela talked earlier about the entrance and communion antiphons, which are certainly gaining, there's a lot of interest in that, and the pastoral letter really emphasizes singing the antiphons. So we do provide resources for that, the ones that she mentioned. I know she's been using those Walker settings, the choral settings of the communion antiphons, which I've personally heard down at the cathedral, very beautiful. And so really, I just want to emphasize and clarify that parishes that are looking to fulfill the principles of the pastoral letter can do so using our resources. And I would close by saying that OCP shares Archbishop Sample's concern and passion for excellence in the liturgy. We have for many years. That's part of our mission. For many years, we've been making massive investments in helping parishes to celebrate beautiful, inspiring liturgies. And so while the letter doesn't change the way we will be publishing, we are certainly committed to continuing our good partnership with Archbishop Sample and the local archdiocese and supporting our common goal of liturgies that conform to the mind of the church and encourage the full conscious and active participation of the faithful, which Dr. Byer will also reiterate that the Second Vatican Council says is the aim to be considered before all else. So there will be more information about this for those maybe who missed the webinar or are looking to hear more about this. We're going to be posting some information on our website. So within the next few days, please visit ocp.org.
Thank you, Wade. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Jethro. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. If anybody wants more information on anything that was talked about here, feel free to call 1-888-260-7206 or product specialist at ocp.org. If you want to look at the webinar slides and video, that'll be available soon at ocp.org/webinars. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your questions and your participation, and God bless you.